NZ Warriors 2025 NRL campaign almost ready to kick off. Just weeks away from the preseason challenge. Not long to go till we kick it off in Vegas against the Raiders. Time to take a bit of a look at our losses and our gains from 2024 versus 2025. So, over the next couple of episodes, I'm going to break down some of the statistical losses and gains we've had from the group of players who left at the end of 2024 versus who we've gained for 2025. I think instinctively we'll all realize that we haven't leveled up. We've got to be less experienced. We're going to have guys who deliver lower numbers. But I'd like to put a bit of context around it for you guys so you can actually see where we've dropped off and a couple of areas where we've actually gained to give you a little bit of an insight into what we could expect from the boys in 2025. So to start off with, just to remind you who we have actually lost at the end of 2024. Obviously, it starts with the big dog AFB who's gone off to the Sharks. Then you've got Jazz Tavanga who's gone over to Manly. Sean Johnson who's retired. Marcelo Montoya who's gone to the Dogs. Paul Roach who's headed over to Q Cup. And most recently, our captain fantastic, Tohu Harris, succumbing to injury. Not a surprise, but wasn't really expecting it to happen just weeks out from the preseason challenge. So there's a significant amount of experience. Some very long serving Warriors have departed our shores. And looking at the gains we've had, the big dog, James Fisher Harris, the Kiwi captain, he's our replacement for AFB. Not like for like at any stretch of the imagination, which you'll see when I break down these stats, but I don't think we could have asked for a better replacement. Aaron Clark, probably a very similar like for like replacement for Jazz Tavanga, a little bit younger, very similar stats wise. That said, you'll see some differences as I break down the stats for those two as well. Then we've got Tanner Boyd. No one saw that coming. That came out of the blue. Initially a little bit underwhelmed, but I'm really excited to see what Webby can make out of him. We've seen him level up a lot of guys like Jackson Ford, Mitch Barnett, so who's to say he can't do that with Tanner Boyd in 2025? And last but not least, for the guys who've been brought in and are part of the top 30 to 28 players at the moment, Sam Healey, the young gun hooker coming to us from the Sharks, yet to debut in NRL, but by all accounts, this kid has got what it takes. Son of Sharks legend Mitch Healey. A lot of Sharks fans were pretty gutted to see him leave. We've also got the likes of Jett. We've also got the likes of Jett Cleary, but I understand he's going to start out at under 21. We've also brought in Jett Cleary, but by all accounts, he'll start in Jersey Fleet, the under 21 team with Luke Hanson. We've brought over another bunch of young Australians who'll beef up our fleet side, and we've signed a bunch of quality young local players for our junior sides. But as far as the NRL squad goes, these are our four main gains in my eyes. So, like I mentioned, initially, everyone's going to recognize we've had a massive drop in experience, but I wanted to compare the average age. I felt last year we had one of the oldest squads, and you can see there, over 26 years old. That was the average age of the players who played NRL last year, 31 of them in total. This year it's just 24 and a half when you're looking at the 28 players in our top 30 at this stage. That's a big difference. But what's an even greater difference is the number of NRL games played at the end of 2024. 2,996 games of NRL, the 31 guys who played NRL in 2024 for the Warriors. Heading into 2025, the 28 players in our top 30 only have 2,159. That's 837 less games. Man, that's a huge amount. I don't think people can comprehend how big that impact is going to be. A lot of fans say, yeah, bring these young guys in, give them their chance, they're ready. What you got to remember, guys, is we had no juniors for 3 years during COVID. Right now, guys like Zion Mau'ula, Leka Halasima, Jacob Laban, if we hadn't had COVID, they would have a group of guys with 2 or 3 more years experience than them sitting between them and the NRL players right now. So we would have had guys with 100 plus games of cup ready to come up, ready to NRL. They would have been in their mid 20s. But as it turns out, all of our young guns are still around 20, 21 years old. I think it's highly unlikely Webby plays those guys week in and week out in 2025. I think the best case scenario is you see 1 or 2 of them play maybe 15 to 20 games. But for the rest of them, I think it'll be like 3, 4, 5 game blocks, rotating them in and out because it's just too hard for them to sustain. We saw Jacob and Leka be classic examples. Their first games in NRL, they smashed it. but they started to drop off after a couple of games because it's just a really intense level that's difficult for a guy who's still in their early 20s to maintain. So be careful how much you expect from them, because I don't think they will be playing every week, because I wouldn't expect them to play regularly unless we have some significant injuries, which I hope we don't. So for the first part of this video, I want to compare some key forward losses versus key forward gains. I haven't included Paul Roach in this for the losses because he played such limited time in 2024, but I have included Sam Healey for the gains, even though he hasn't played NRL yet. I highly expect him to be playing a lot of footy for our top team in 2025. So AFB, Tohu Harris and Jazz Tavanga, comparing what they bought in 2024 or their overall career stats versus the gains of James Fisher Harris, Aaron Clark, and Sam Healey. Uh, when I compare these groups, you'll see there are some significant drop offs, but there are a couple of areas that we've improved on a little. So, as you can see here, there's been a massive drop off in experience just from this group of 6 players alone. 181 less combined games. If we took James Fisher Harris out of the equation, we would be well over 1,000 games in deficit compared to our squad last year. So we're bloody lucky we brought him in. Next up, I wanted to look at how many games each of these players played in 2024 and their average minutes when they did play. A lot of people will be really interested in the comparisons between AFB and James Fisher Harris. As you can see, they both played 23 games, but AFB with a significantly larger amount of minutes, averaging 60, playing well over 70 minutes at certain times in the season, whereas James Fisher Harris just with 47 minutes. I'm curious to see how they go with Webby. Do they look to lift his minutes? I really hope they don't. I hope we have a smarter middle rotation next year so we don't fatigue these guys. We saw at the beginning of the year in 2024, we had a lot of experienced bench players out. So Tohu, Mitch Barnett, and AFB were all playing well over 70 minutes a game, and I think that fatigued them towards the end of the year. So I'd love to see our middles playing a little bit shorter stints, but playing with a lot more impact and a lot more speed. And Tohu Harris playing an average of 65 minutes a game is a huge loss. A lot of people saying he was slow and tired, but don't underestimate his ability to just keep going, to scramble, make those tackles, to get that extra yard, to hold our line together. He's going to be a huge loss. Clark playing relatively good minutes off the bench there, a little bit more than Jazz, but still very similar. Healey, for those who don't know, played a bench role for the Sharks. He did play 26 games, which shows he's robust, including the grand final, which they won. But I think he was only playing around 20 to 25 minutes a game. I don't know the exact number because it's not published by the New South Wales Rugby League. So next up, a really important area for these forwards is meters gained and post-contact meters. This is where you see another massive gulf between what AFB did and James Fisher Harris does. Completely different players. Obviously, they're playing in a different team and played different roles. We may see those numbers come up for James this year, but average of 175 meters for AFB, leading all forwards in the NRL, 74 post contact meters. Those post contact meters are more than a lot of props in the NRL are gaining meters, full stop. James Fisher Harris with 128 meters and 43 post contact meters. Tohu Harris, sneaky 134 meters and 45 meters post contact. While they weren't the fastest meters in the world, they got us momentum. He took a lot of dirty hit ups. So we're going to miss that. Jazz Tavanga and Aaron Clark, very similar there again. Aaron Clark playing slightly bigger minutes, getting slightly more meters and slightly more post contact. So I do think they cancel each other out. It's Jazz's energy and his intensity and his passion that I'm really looking for Clark to match. I hope he can, and I hope he can become the cult hero Mount Smart like Jazz always was. And Sam Healey, this is an interesting game for me. 52 average running meters out of hooker is more than Wade Egan and Freddie Lussick combined last year. He is an absolute gun at running out of dummy half, right up there with the likes of Harry Grant. His acceleration, but more importantly, his ability to link up with his support players, next level guys. So that's one thing for us to be excited about in 2025 with the gains versus the losses. Defensive stats, tackle breaks and offloads. 84 tackle breaks from AFB. James Fisher Harris with under half that. Offloads 24 from AFB. He dropped a whole lot more offloads in the back half of the season. I think in the first half of the season in 2024, we had almost no offloads. But I think once we started to chase the season, him and Mitch Barnett started to throw a few more. Really good to see here that Sam Healey had 22 offloads playing at hooker. Like I said, he's got a great ability to link up with his support players, get that ball away in contact. So that adds a new dimension to our play. That's why I think he's going to be playing a lot in 2025. Looking at how lean our forwards are looking after the preseason, I feel like we're definitely going to be playing an up-tempo game. That's where Sam Healey's going to be vital. So I'm really not sure what role Freddie Lussick plays. Do they look to use him as a 13 cover? Not 100% sure, but because of that speed and that ability to get that second phase ball, Sam Healey is right up there in the list for me for 2025. Defensively is not too bad. We can see the biggest difference here is what Tohu delivered. His ability to just get off that ground and tackle, as broken as he was, making over 45 tackles some games, averaging 37 at 95%. Man, that's going to be hard to replace. Looking at AFB and James Fisher Harris, basically the same number of tackles per game, which makes them look like they cancel each other out. But remembering AFB played about 20% more minutes. So while he's on the field, James Fisher Harris definitely makes more tackles. If I could criticize anything of the guy in AFB who was probably the best forward in the NRL in 2024, is at times he gets a little bit down on it. He doesn't scramble. He'll stand there and kind of watch things go by. So he doesn't get picked up for a missed tackle because he doesn't actually try to make the tackle. And it's not often, but it does happen. And I would say 2 or 3 times a game, he would just back off a little bit and he wouldn't make that effort. And it created a gap out wide that would sometimes lead to a try. And maybe that's understandable considering the amount of effort he put in an offense. They have to balance things out. But I don't think we see that from James Fisher Harris in 2025. Good to see Sam Healey there with, like I said, only playing around 20, 25 minutes, up around the 23 tackle mark. Wade Egan at times, I think he might be averaging maybe 40 odd tackles a game, something crazy like that, 38. I think we could expect a similar number from Healey if he was playing similar minutes. So again, not a bad balance here, but it's Tohu's effort that we're going to miss. I'm not sure how we're going to cover that up. Look to a guy like Jackson Ford to really step up. To wrap things up with this group of forwards, the negative areas, the errors, and penalties. The thing that stands out for me here, Jazz Tavanga got so much shit for his errors and the penalties. Take a look at that, guys. Just 6 errors in 2024. Basically the same as Tohu, half the amount of AFB. Pretty similar to what we're getting from Clark. I think he really improved that over the past 18 months under Webby. Sometimes the timing wasn't great, but he wasn't as bad as we expected. Good to see not a huge amount of errors from James Fisher Harris, but penalties, 8 of those. That I think will be a reflection of the Panthers' game plan, holding those guys down at ruck, pushing the limits, so you're going to get penalised every now and then. I don't think you'll be able to push the limits as much with the Warriors jersey on because we know that whistle gets blown, so much quicker for us. Can he reduce that number in 2025? I certainly hope so because it's the errors, the silly piggyback penalties that killed us in 2024. We want to bring that number down for 2025. So overall, you have to admit our losses outweigh our gains in 2025, but I'm really excited to see how they use James Fisher Harris. I'm really excited to see if Aaron Clark can step up and deliver more than Jazz did, try and match some of those numbers that Tohu was able to deliver. I expect him to play a similar role to what Tohu did. So although I've been comparing Clark to Jazz, I think he's going to play a similar role to Tohu. So we're going to have to see him step up and deliver those numbers for 2025. What Healey has a chance to deliver remains to be seen. Is Freddie still seen as a number 2 hooker, or has Sam Healey jumped over him and stepped into that role? I really don't know, but I certainly hope he is. I like Freddie Lussick. I think he's a great workhorse, but the X factor Sam Healey delivers is one of the things that excites me most heading into the season. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on the forward wins and losses, how you think our pack's going to look in 2025, what kind of game plan we'll be looking to play through the forwards. Like I said, I think it's fast, direct. I think he's going to be playing on energy. I think he's going to use guys like Jackson Ford in the middle for big minutes to just get that speed and the momentum going. But I have absolutely no idea if I'm completely honest because the Warriors have showed us almost nothing of the preseason so far.